Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round. I'm joined by my friend Patrick,
How's it going, everyone?
and we are here to talk about Ghostbusters Winter is Coming. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. The I guess you'd call it like it's a direct sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife. Um, I guess I'd call it like the second movie in like this new series. It's Afterlife was like a legacy sequel, and this is just like a straight up sequel to Afterlife.
hmm
So we're gonna get into that. We're all gonna get into spoilers. You have been warned. If you want a spoiler free review, there's a link in the description to my written review of the movie. Before we get started, did you know that Halloween Year Round now has a Patreon? You can
Ooh.
you can join for just $5 a month. With that, you get all these fun extras. You get to listen to me and my wife bicker, doing an audio commentary once a month, and who doesn't want to hear that? So without further ado, let's get into Ghostbusters.
Does busting make you feel good?
More than I'm allowed to admit. So this movie it occupies an interesting space because the Ghostbusters franchise, they really it was just two movies. They did the 2016 reboot that the less we talk about, probably the better for the
Yeah,
internet's sake.
agreed.
Um, and then Afterlife was a way to kind of like bring it back, follow that same continuity. And I thought it did a really good job of being a legacy sequel. This is coming from someone who I don't really like legacy sequels, it just in general, but Ghostbusters Afterlife I did really like. So I went into this one feeling like that one was bringing it back, and this one was going to feel more like a traditional Ghostbusters movies because they're back in New York. And right
hmm
from the beginning, they're ghost busting. I mean, right from the opening scene, we pick up with the Spangler family, um, with Phoebe, now a little older, a little more confident, taking on giant blue dragons as they fly through Hell's Kitchen.
That is very true. And from what I read, it was a two. It was set 2 years after Ghostbusters Afterlife. So yeah, we definitely see that they are starting to get more into the ghost busting side of the business. We also see Ernie Hudson's as a Winston as a helping the crew out, and even help as a not only financially but also technologically with a new lab setup, which was really cool to see.
Yeah, this one kind of and I use this phrase very specifically. This one really like expanded the mythology of Ghostbusters, where we were used to kind of seeing as just, oh, it's just a crew of guys, living out of the firehouse. This one really expanded that, there's a whole James Bond-esque lab behind them. And we get a little bit into like, there have been people busting ghosts for thousands of years, and there was this like sacred order that passed down the responsibility of doing so. Um, but it opens up almost like Captain America Civil War does, where we jump right into the action and then something goes wrong and then we face the consequences of those actions. And then we get the return, probably my favorite return out of either this or Afterlife. You get Walter Peck back,
Oh yeah.
the man who allegedly has no dick. And he's now mayor of New York City, which I made a tweet that went viral when the trailer came out. Like, that's the most accurate thing, is that this like bureaucrat has stayed in that position, has just moved up over the last 40 years. That he's now the mayor, and I would give anything to see what his opponent's attack ads must have been like when he was running for mayor, because
Yes.
they referenced a certain something. They, we heard he doesn't have a dick. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
what kind of campaign must he have run? That being said, I think that he makes for a great villain because he's not overtly evil. He's definitely, he represents the bureaucracy. He represents, red tape, and it's all kind of under the guise of, oh well, I'm trying to keep people safe. I'm trying to, and it's like, to his credit, to his credit,
Hmm.
who pays for all the damage the Ghostbusters cause? That's a valid question.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, especially from the very first movie where they literally like tore up an entire ball as a ballroom in a hotel. So yeah, it makes you as a wonder
It's
like who is
expensive.
paying.
Like,
Yeah,
are they footing the bill? Are they, because I can even understand from, like, if the taxpayers are footing the bill, I can understand people being upset about that.
yeah,
And this kind of leads to the question of, should Phoebe be ghost busting? She's still a minor. It's not safe. It's skirting. I know he says, like, you cannot employ a child to do this. And Paul Rudd is like, oh, we don't pay her. And he's like, oh, so it's like indentured servitude.
right.
That's even worse.
Yeah. Or one of those unpaid internships.
Ah, yes, one of those dread. Well, if you work here long enough, maybe you'll get the privilege of working here.
I know, maybe.
But I think the movie really kind of focuses on her. I would say even more so than Afterlife. Phoebe, as played by McKenna Grace.
Hmm.
Um, she's very much like the protagonist here. She's the one that kind of has the arc where, she's not sure what she wants to do. She was always kind of like a socially awkward kid, especially in the first one. And I
Yes.
like the way this movie kind of makes her come into her own.
Hmm.
She gets she meets this like ghost friend played by what's her name? Emily Allen Lind, who is I know best from the Babysitter movies, and I think her little sister is on the Chucky show.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
believe you're right on that.
I have very mixed feelings about this character. I mean, right from the get go, I'm like, oh, this character is obviously involved with the villain somehow. It's
Hmm.
pretty obvious from the start that, it's going to be like a liar revealed. And I mean, let's admit it for what it is. It's a cliche. It's a cliche for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I was getting that sense as I was like as I watching it. I'm like, yeah, like she's gonna have involvement with the big bad, and yeah, it was true.
I wasn't sure how, and I'm still not sure how I feel about. To my knowledge, it's like the first time in this series that you have a ghost basically acting like a human character, just kind of walking around normal, like still with the ethereal filter,
Mhm.
but
Was
having
it?
whole conversations.
Well, to their credit, from what I was reading earlier, that they were taking more inspiration from the real Ghostbusters cartoon series with various ghosts who also had more of a human-like
Okay.
persona, like Sam Hain or Salwin, like depending on how you want to say it, like a character like that. So I think they were channeling that kind of presence with this ghost in particular.
So I get that, and that's cool. Like, it's cool to know that, and to know that, like, it is based on something within the lore, within the universe. But I don't know, tonally, does it mesh with everything in this continuity that began
Mm,
with the first one? That's the only, like,
yeah,
where are
that's
all the
true.
other ghosts like that? And I just I feel like there could have been, because ultimately, spoilers,
Mhm.
this ghost, she calls herself Melody. Her goal is to get Phoebe to, like, disassociate from her body so she can do the chant to bring forth the ancient evil god Night King that's going to freeze everything and, attack Winterfell. Sorry, I'm mixing up with Game of Thrones.
Right.
Um, this is basically the I'm just gonna call the villain the Night King. This is basically the Night King. Um, so ultimately, her goal is to trick Phoebe into doing that. I feel like you could have cut out that character, that ghost entirely, and found some other way. Like when they try to extract the ghost from that little orb thing, that
Hmm.
could have been when it got unleashed. And I think the marketing is a bit misleading. You go in thinking that like New York is gonna freeze and that's gonna be like the end of the first act, and they're gonna be dealing with that the whole movie. That's really just that's the third act. That's like just the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And like I really like the beginning and I really like that third act where like all the Ghostbusters come together. They
Hmm.
they have Winston, they have Ray, they have Venkman shows up for Bill Murray to get his obligatory 2 scenes and probably bigger paycheck than anyone else there. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think there was a lot going on in the middle that I think you could have either removed entirely or that just dragged a bit. Like it brings back
Yeah.
Lucky from the first movie. She's an
Mhm.
intern. It brings back podcasts, and it's like they were cool characters, but if you took them out of this narrative, what would change?
Yeah, I did notice that myself throughout the movie too, which was kind of a shame. I kind of wish that there was more development with both of them. I guess, it's just the way the story was structured in the second act that needed a bit more tweaking, I guess.
That's what I mean. Like it's
Mhm.
okay to focus on Phoebe and have her have the arc. That makes sense.
Right, of
And
course.
like Trevor, it made sense for Trevor to be there because he's
Mhm.
her brother, and like where else is he gonna be?
Right.
So for him to kind of take a more, side role, I'm sure that, his actor is, Finn Wolfhard is
Mhm.
probably super busy filming Stranger Things. So like I'm sure that they could only get him for like certain,
Right.
amounts of time. But I especially so with like podcasts and Lucky, just I felt like they didn't really know what to do with them. And even as much as it pains me to admit, Venkman, he's in 2 scenes and it's obligatory. You gotta have Bill
Oh
Murray
yeah,
in
of
this,
course. Oh yeah, of course.
but he wasn't given much. Like it's more than a cameo, and he's not given much to do. Whereas I think Winston and Ray, I think the movie found things forward. Like Winston's
Oh yeah.
bankrolling the whole thing. He's the
Hmm.
kind of senior mentor in charge running the show. Ray is
Yes.
kind of more like the ceremonial
Hmm.
mentor. So I think that it did a really good job, and I want to give
Oh,
that credit
oh,
to those
absolutely
two
agreed.
characters and meshing them with the younger cast and giving them a lot of stuff to do. So
Agreed 100% on that.
yeah, I really like that.
Hmm. Yeah, because I felt like that was really absent from the first one. I understand that they
Mhm.
were like building up to that, but I was hoping that they were going to have more actual involvement as, like supporting slash mentor as a mentoring characters, which I'm glad they did because I really felt that throughout the movie.
Of course, exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about Kumail Nanjiani, who
Uh, oh
I'm a
yeah.
huge fan of. I've loved him since I saw The Big Sick. I think he's really really funny. I
Hmm.
know that Marvel's The Eternals had a lot of issues. He was probably my favorite part of that movie,
I would agree with you on that
and
one.
and it's saddened me to hear that it's lackluster reception kind of did a number on him like emotionally, and it really bothered him, and it hurt me to see that because I'm like, you were the best part of it, like you
Right.
you did everything right. And they
Yeah,
bring
is it?
him back in this, and
Mhm.
I don't know of any other way to explain it. He's a firebender. Firebenders are a thing.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see that they were kind of drawing inspiration from like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I know like there's other various like cultural influences that have that kind of thing with fire as a fire bending or you
Hmm.
know fire as a fire shaping, if that makes any sense. Because they definitely like I felt like they were definitely moving more towards like Indian folklore for this creature, which is it that they're facing, which was very interesting. And just seeing him, like I said, as like I said, like a hustler, just trying to like make a quick buck, and ultimately like pawning off his heritage, and then kind of realizing, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have respected more of like like what my ancestors had been doing all this time, and
Mhm.
ultimately like like having that kind of redemption arc was very interesting to see.
Yeah, I really liked what it did with him. But
Hmm.
again, kind of like with, Madison the Ghost, I'm torn between like this now exists in universe with the first two Ghostbusters movies. And I think that maybe the whole firebending element, that's something that again, I'm not saying it was in the cartoon series, but something like that would fit in there.
Hmm.
But at the same time, where else are you going to go with these movies? You can't just do the same thing over and over again. As much as I loved Afterlife, I did roll my eyes a bit with like, oh, we're doing Gozer again.
Yeah, originally like I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like, why is Gozer coming back? But then I felt like at least the explanation was more than enough, especially with like tying in back with Chandler, and the fact that he had a mining town, and that also like tied in directly with the first movie with the whole
Yeah.
building. Is it, well, I mean, like seriously, like the selenium is it beams, the way they were installed in the first one, that was the spiritual conduit that was going to
Mhm.
summon Gozer.
The explanation was that the studio wanted it to be Gozer to remind people of the first one, though. I,
Yeah,
I
no.
I think that's an example of that's the real reason. And you
Mhm.
you did a great job explaining their attempt to explain it in universe. But let's
Thank
not
you.
pretend that that's not the real reason.
Right. Yeah,
It,
but
it
at the
was to
same,
remind. So that's
is it
why I liked that this was a different villain.
right? Yeah, I mean, because you can't just like, I mean, because like that was the other thing too. Like I was even thinking, like in this movie, is it possible that like Vigo the Carpathian might possibly have some kind of cameo or some kind of reference? But yeah, completely different ghosts, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Hmm. But no, I like, there are certain aspects of it I really, really, obviously, you know, McKenna Grace, very talented
Hmm.
actress. I know she's kind of known for playing the younger version of every character and everything. She was
Hmm.
young Captain Marvel, young Tanya Harding. Um, she was the younger version of the main character in Malignant. Um, she was young Judy Warren in Annabelle Comes Home. It's cool to see her kind of get to be her own character and not just like the
Hmm.
younger version of somebody.
Oh yeah, I loved her performance, like not only in Afterlife but in Frozen Empire too. And I definitely see her like having a really great acting career.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Um, Again, and everyone I thought did a great job with what they were given. Like I think that, and it pains me because I had fun with it,
Hmm.
but if I'm looking at it through a more critical eye, I think definitely the script could have been a little stronger. And while this one did things more differently than Afterlife it followed to a T the formula of a legacy sequel. It did it very well,
Hmm.
but it followed the formula. This one completely went off and did its own different thing. I just don't know that I agreed with every choice it made. So I don't I applaud this movie for having more unique ideas than Afterlife, but I think
Hmm.
Afterlife was an overall better put together and structured movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I do see where you're coming from with that. Is it with that? I mean, overall, I really enjoyed Ghostbusters out Frozen Empire myself. Definitely was fun. Like when it needed to be funny, it was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
When it needed to be, more emotional, I definitely felt that. Although I didn't feel as emotionally like attached to certain characters, like the Ghost Melody, like like, the way that when spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Afterlife, when Egon Spangler, aka Harold Ramis, finally was revealed, like that was a really like more emotional impact. Is it for me as not only a fan of Ghostbusters but also of the late director. So I definitely felt, like I said, more of a stronger connection with Afterlife. Whereas, like I said, whereas Frozen Empire was a great fun movie, but at the same time, though, I definitely see where you're coming from. Certain parts of the script needed to be tightened up or tweaked a bit more so that we could get a little more development with certain areas. And of course, understanding exactly like adding the newer elements of so what other various supernatural entities are we going to introduce? What kind of um, like cultural mysticisms that is it going to have? And how is that all going to like affect the main story moving forward? Because
Mhm.
I mean they're going to definitely do like several more of these Ghostbuster films. There's no
Oh, I'm
doubt about
sure.
that.
As long as they're making money, and yeah,
Hmm.
there really is no limit to how many different villains or other mythologies you can introduce.
Absolutely.
Something that's really interesting is that this is a universe where it's like every religion and every mythology kind of all exists simultaneously.
Yep.
It's that, like, Ray talks about, oh, you'll have the strength of Samson and the speed of Achilles, and it's like, so in this universe, like the Judeo-Christian Bible is true, but then also Greek mythology is true, and it's just
Right.
I think that's such a fascinating idea that doesn't get enough attention. That
Oh,
all of these
absolutely.
different things are true in this universe, and as a
Mhm.
result, you can pull from any one of them,
Yes.
to do something with. You know,
Mhm.
yes, this
Yeah.
one kind of dealt more with like Indian, Hindu, folklore and mythology,
Mhm.
but I mean, you could bring in the Greek gods, you could bring in like Anubis, like
Yes.
there's no
Is
limit
it?
to what you could do. You could have them deal with a
Yeah.
Wendigo
Yeah,
or
exactly.
the devil himself. Like there's so much potential and so much
Absolutely.
room. I just I hope for future installments they kind of do better with giving each character their own thing to do. And at a certain point, as much fun as it is to see Bill Murray, him just showing up at the end for the final fight is gonna get old
Yeah.
if that's all he's showing up for. And it's like I love seeing him in the movie, but I think Venkman was not given as much to do as Ray and Winston were. And if
Yeah,
that
agreed on
means
that.
we don't get him, if that means we only get Ray and Winston because they've got more to do, that's a better choice
Mhm.
creatively and
Yeah.
narratively.
Yeah. And I do agree with you there. I mean, I know like Bill Murray also feels very connected with these films too, with Harold Ramis's passing, and I
Of
know,
course.
yeah, and it's like he's obviously doing it for him in his memory, which I completely respect, and actually I do think that's very good, very good of him to help to continue with these movies. But I do agree, either he needs to have something more to do, or at this point he should just be off on a beach, like enjoy, like enjoying
In real
the
life
sunset.
too. And
Yeah,
I'm not saying, and again, I'm not saying don't have him in the movie. I'm saying
right, exactly, same
give him
here.
something to do in the movie.
Right, yeah, exactly, he needs to have more. Yeah, there needs to be something more going on with him, because I do agree, like you have Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd, and both of them have various things going on that is helping to build up the story. So, so yeah, like there needs to be something else, I guess. They just have to figure out, like like, what is Venkman's gonna purpose is gonna be moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And again, whatever beach he's on, hopefully it's not one being frozen.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, any final thoughts on the movie? Things you like, things you didn't like, things you haven't talked about.
Okay. Well, like I said, I definitely like the fact that, we had more of the legacy cast, like, coming in to do was doing more with it. Just seeing them all back together again was a great, especially at the end. Like I said, Dan Aykroyd in real life definitely loves the supernatural and finds it fascinating. So like I felt like he might have had more involvement with that kind of story
Mhm.
elements, which
Like he
you
wasn't
know,
really acting when he was talking how
right.
excited when that
Yes.
scene with him and Winston when he's
Yes.
like, "No, this is what I love
It,
to do."
exactly. I
I
love
felt
that
like he
part.
was talking to the audience. Like, no,
Yeah,
being here in Ghostbusters talking about supernatural stuff, this is what I, Dan Aykroyd, want to be doing with my golden years.
exactly. Oh, agreed 100% on that. And that's what I really love too. That's the enthusiasm that I love, and that definitely conveyed very well in the
Mhm.
movie. So in terms of like, stuff I like, that's definitely a high point. Um, and also it was nice too to see that they were still using practical effects in addition to some of the newer CGI, which was good. It was a good
Slimer
blend of
was
the
a
two.
puppet, and
That's
you
right.
could tell that he was. That
Oh yeah,
that
that
hand
that made me
had
smile.
was very tangible, and you felt like it was really there.
Yeah, and hopefully like we'll get to see more of Slimer in the following movies too. Because yeah, he has like more of like like a cameo as a role
He
periodically
he
throughout the
he he's
movie.
their pet that lives in the attic.
Yeah,
That's his
exactly.
current role. No, but
Yeah.
like I said, I had fun. It's a fun movie.
Hmm.
Don't, my criticisms are, they're my criticisms. It's not a perfect movie. I still think Afterlife was probably a better movie, but that does not diminish in any way that I had fun with this one, and
Hmm.
it is really funny. The jokes are
Exactly.
on point, and definitely check it out if you haven't. Let us know what you thought. Leave a comment.
Yeah.
What character do you think should have been there, or what ghost do you want to see them fight in a future movie? Were you also looking for Rick Moranis to pop up, and we're kind of bummed when he didn't, but just
Yeah.
hoping for the next one.
Yep. Fingers
Uh,
crossed.
exactly. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up getting frozen and turned into a popsicle by Discount Night King. And as always, every day
Is Halloween.